So, welcome to the Armchair Trader podcast. And this week we're talking about gold mining, and specifically and unusually, we're talking about gold mining in Scotland, which is a jurisdiction you don't often hear us discussing gold mining in. And to talk to us today, we've got Phil Day, who's joining us from Scotgold Resources, a listed Scottish gold miner. Welcome to the program, Phil.
Thank you very much for having me.
A lot of our listeners will be familiar with gold mining, but may be surprised to hear that there is actually a gold mine up in Scotland. It's not really a jurisdiction we associate with gold mining. Can you give us a quick overview of what Scottish gold mining looks like? Because it's not really a very crowded field, is it?
No, it's not a crowded field at all. So it basically consists of one company that's in operations. There are a few others, I believe, that are doing some exploration work. No, I'm proud to say that we're the only operating gold mine up this way, and actually in Scotland together. And we are both an operator and an explorer.
Can you give us a sort of brief overview of Scotgold Resources, what the company looks like?
Yeah, sure. So Scotgold has a flagship asset called the Cononish Gold Mine. It is close to Tindrum town on the road between east and west of Scotland in the Highlands, right in the middle of the national park. We are mining in an underground mine through a portal on the side of a hill, and we have a processing facility on site as well to make make two products, where we make a concentrate product and we make a gold gravity product as well, of which we then later sell down through the Grangemouth ports and off to refineries in around the UK.
And what was we hear a lot about the impact of COVID on mining and disruption of the mining industry. We've heard about how lots of mines, for example, in places like British Columbia and Mongolia and were shut down, and also in South Africa. What was the impact of the pandemic on your mining activity in Scotland?
Look, it was difficult for us, like it was for everyone else. Back in 2020, we shut the mine down for various times when we needed to comply with the national regulations at the time. But then when it reopened, we had to just manage the situation, manage it very, very carefully with policies and procedures, and having distance measures and cleanliness of tables and cleanliness of workplaces for individuals. We have a local accommodation inside in Tindrum itself as well. So we had to do a lot of testing of our people, because they're obviously on a rotating work shifts patterns. So every time they came back, we had to retest them and test them when they're in here, so that we never really had any individual outbreak that caused us to shut down outside of the government regulated shutdowns. So we carefully managed that, but we did get up to peaks of, say, 10 or 15 people off at any given time, and those people had to work from home and then come back in when they were allowed to. So look, it was an extremely tough time. Me personally, it meant I had to learn how to go into the control room and run the control room at times that I needed to. So we all had to double down, triple down, quadruple down onto positions to make sure the place ran. And but at the same time, the camaraderie, the spirit of the people, the way that they all learnt, and the skills that they all gained, and the cross sectional issues a lot of mines have that we didn't, because we're able to just all do each other's jobs, and I think there was a real benefit from it as well. So we all learnt a lot, and we all come out of it a lot better.
You've obviously been in the mining industry for quite a long time, over 25 years. You've worked in a number of different jurisdictions. Do you see any differences or advantages inherent in mining in Scotland versus, say, some of the other jurisdictions that you've worked in?
It's always difficult to answer that question, because there are positives and there's negatives. I'll talk front and center about the negatives. The negatives is always the safety implications of working with a workforce that doesn't understand the inherent dangers of mining, because it does obviously have them alive and present. So when you are, you're exploding underground and you're using machines that are running 24 hours, there's always potential for people to get hurt, right? So using it or having an inexperienced team for the first few months was difficult, but we had to focus in on doing a lot of training. We had to rely on the people that do have the experience and were able to, use good frontline leadership skills of getting out there and talking and training and making sure that they work very hard on competency based training, not just training per se. In a nutshell, since I joined in April, we haven't had one serious incident. But it was always something that was in the front of our mind, front and center, that it could potentially happen, and we just managed it very, very well by just intensifying our levels of supervision and commitments. Effectively, it translates that I just lived on site pretty much every single day for the whole year of 2021. But that's what is needed to be done. That's what happens and is required. And now we have a team of people that are extremely competent. I've got a lot of people who've never done mining before in their life in supervision positions, extremely inquisitive, always wanting to learn, always wanting to do things, but they've got the natural skills of leadership or natural skills of, people, of how to manage other people. So I'm just very happy to say they're a significant jump of trained people since this time last year.
And talking about Cononish Glen, which is where the mine is located, I mean, if you look at some other sort of what I would call mature gold jurisdictions, like taking just the British Columbia as an example, there's a lot of history of mining and prospecting in these areas, and a lot of the junior miners have a very good idea of where the historic seams are, what's been worked on, what hasn't, where the claims are, etc. Scotland, I mean, the British Isles, if you look at British Isles mining, there are obviously other miners active here, but whereas we've got a long history in, say, tin mining, it's not really been seen as a big producer of gold. So how was the original resource located?
Luck. No, I'm joking. It was very well researched. The geological history effectively formulated a theory that the gold band actually starts from in and around Newfoundland and makes its way through the Atlantic up into Northern Ireland and then skims across into Scotland and then probably ends up over into Sweden. So that theory was tested a few times, and a few sampling and or exploration programs were done both in Northern Ireland and Newfoundland and Scotland, and each one of those three countries are, now either in operations or definitely at the higher levels of exploration. And then there's obviously a lot of science to it, and there's a lot of reasons and how they were able to test that, and it's another 2 or 3 hour discussion in itself. But it wasn't found just by a miracle. It was very well researched, very well understood. If you look back at the geological formation history,
And now we've obviously the COVID pandemic is receding. What's production looking like at the mine at the moment?
it's wonderful. The this particular year we had to make a decision in the first quarter to open up our mine because it's literally on a mountain itself. So we have one portal going in one side. So you can definitely focus in on one side if you really, really wanted to, but the better approach was to open it up by continue to mine all the way across. So it meant that we had to have a few difficult months by design, difficult design. But now that means that we've opened up both sides of the vein itself, and we can then access the areas that we know are higher grade, which is always going to be the case because that's what grade control mining is all about versus mining just on the resource model. So our data is just becoming more and more consistent. It's becoming much more accurate. The more we mine, the more we know, and that means we get to pick and choose where we want to mine. So even as we're developing further and further to get more and more access, we can mine areas, we're higher grade and lower grade in order to make sure we just maintain that revenue. And this is all underpinned because of what I said previously. The team on the mine front and on the processing front were able in 2021 to ramp it up so quickly and so efficiently and so effectively that we're now running availabilities on the process plant in the 90s. We're hitting 3,000 tons per month quite readily, quite easily. We've done mill relines now 3 or 4 times, so the guys have never done that before and they can do it. So one would almost say it's kind of very, very steady. And opening up the mine itself is the critical part, in order for us to step forward into the next phase, which is to go from the 3,000 up to 6,000. Because you can imagine you just need more and more development tunnels, you need more and more ventilation, you need more and more power for it to open up and larger and larger. And at the same time, we need to do some debottlenecking exercises on the process plant through thickeners and ore sorters and little things like that. So they both come up together at the same rate to get up to 6,000. So, to answer the first question, we're at the 3,000. We've been doing it for quite a lot of months now. But now that we're able to access good gold grades all the time consistently, whilst we're developing at the same time, so it doesn't mean we're high grading, as some people sometimes accuse us of. We're not doing that at all. We are mining the vein as it needs to be and picking and choosing and developing and like as is required. But it wasn't like that at the beginning. We just had to get across a critical mass of tunnel development in order for us to get to this stage. That's where we're at now, but the real excitement is to go from where we are up to phase 2, which is the 6,000 tons per month, which I believe we'll hit by Q1, Q2 of next year. Because our fixed costs are so high, they're sitting in around about the 80%. So any particular incremental change we get in ounces of gold through tons of material through the mine and the process plant is just extra revenue. And we believe that extra revenue is going to be sitting in the 34 million mark per annum sometimes next year. And with our costs being, as is quoted, around about 544 per ounce, basically the place becomes a bit of a cash cow. And it's all because it's a high-grade mine. It is unbelievably high grade. It's beautifully high grade would be the word. I can't overestimate it. I keep showing people the video drone footage and taking people on the ground and showing them, because sometimes the vein just goes way larger than our development drifts, up to 4 meter wide veins sometimes. It just keeps giving us, it's unbelievably high grade, sitting sometimes up to 40 grams per ton, sometimes 30, but on average between 16 and at the moment I think we're about 20 grams per ton. So it's beautiful, in a word.
Yeah, that's huge.
Absolutely glorious.
And I mean, you're obviously in a quite a good position because the mine is already making money. Presumably, that allows you to then fund further exploration and development.
Well, this is the thing. We were down in 1-1 this week, trying to answer that particular question ourselves. We've got this quandary where we've got a head above water, making money. We've got the loan that we were gracefully given by Fernwealth out of Switzerland and through the consortium of investors. And we've got a lot of good backers with the original loan providers and our board as well, who was also largely invested in the company. So we've got a lot of very good backers to help us get to where we are. And yes, we do make money, but then it's just a matter of time because, like I said, with mining, it's one of these things that I know it's a bit of a nuance, but kind of hopefully makes a lot of sense, is that as you start to develop more and more and more of the mine, you get more and more access, to get more and more of the gold. Yes, your revenue starts going up and up and up, but that means you have to wait a while until your cash really starts to flow into the company. So option A is we just wait. We wait until the cash reserves pull up, and then we go into exploration, then we go into this, and we go that. But realistically, for us, we thought, and we'd love it to happen, it would be far more exciting if other people got on board and actually took like a really nice investment within the company, particularly in say maybe and take an equity stake, and we would just take that money and just use it straight away for exploration now, and then make this place look super exciting, much more exciting than what I just described, where you're making a cash cow. And imagine they've got a 34 million per annum revenue company with potentially about 21 million EBITDA, plus exploring to make it more than 9-year mine life, maybe say 18-year mine life, plus going to actually find out some other ones as well. We could be in the 500,000 ounce sort of company really, really quickly. So pushing ourselves from a 40 million market cap to potentially, 100, 200, 300 million, yeah. And we employ 90 people now. So each one of those other ones is going to employ another 90 people, another 90 people, So, we're just getting so many benefits to the local community, benefits from to the shareholders, benefits to the directors, benefits to everyone who invests. So, yeah, so hopefully that answers the question. We're at that point we really would like to know what to do now, because waiting, yes, I can, but I think it'd be just so much more exciting for people to get on board now and get in and help us and take part of and become part of the success that this place is. And arguably, a lot of the hard work's already been done. Like, we went through all the construction. Then we went through COVID again in all the ramp up where other people probably weren't doing it. We're now not exposed to huge, massive commodity price changes and like, because we've done all of our construction. We're in operations, and yeah, and now it's just a waiting game once the mine itself has opened up sufficiently. But God, it would be cool if we could just get out some drill holes out there and excite the world. I think that would change this place significantly. I hope you agree.
No, I would agree with you definitely, and obviously, if there's any major fund managers out there who are busy in the gold space, then it might be worth a look for them. I mean, in terms of the plans you do have on the table, obviously, someone comes in and takes a big stake in the company. That's a big injection of cash. But as things stands as things stand at the moment, what are your plans looking like over the next 12 months?
Well, 2022 is the year to work off the base of the transformational year of 2021. So that's what we call it. We had to do effectively a turnaround in 21 to get it to work, to get it to ramped up, to get the confidence back that it was actually a working asset. Then when we go into 2022, this is a year of growth. So every single quarter has got to achieve a certain target. So the first quarter was the pain quarter. We had to develop, we had to get more tunnels. We did that. Going into quarter two, April alluded to in my last RNS was, wow, it was a bumper number, and when you see the number, people will probably get pretty excited about that. May is turning out to be a really cool month as well. I mean, that's why I'm looking quite relaxed, because the guys are just so well trained and so well competent. They just keep pumping out the concentrate, day after day after day. It's becoming so consistent, which is wonderful, because then we're moving, when a new thickener arrives, to go straight into the growth. We have to get the process plant up to a new level of capacity. We expect that in the probably in the next month, to be up and running. So then that takes us into the end of Q2 into Q3 with a plant that's effectively turbocharged, so to speak. And the mine every single month or every single quarter is starting to incrementally increase and increase and increase. And by the back end of the year, I'll be stoping. Now, for people who understand what stoping is, that's where it becomes really cool, because basically it means for every bang on the buck, I get a lot more tons. We'll be able to understand exactly where the vein is, because our grade control model is so much better at that stage. We'll be blasting beautiful gold material, say up to the thousands of tons rather than 100 odd tons that we do each phase at the moment. And a process plant that's deshackled because of the thickener. And, my revenue just goes up. So that's why we call it the growth. We get that out of the way into the back end of the year, and then we get into Q1 of Q2 of next year with our all sorter, and that's when we get up to the 6,000 nameplate capacity, the phase two as we call it, and that's when we start getting those revenues that I previously quoted. This year is all about the growth from the hard work base that was last year. So different type of work, a bit more, thinking sort of approach, a bit more, got a plan, a bit more exposed to what's the things being delivered and the like on time, a bit more of that. But when they do come and they arrive on site, they just achieve step changes for us, and every new step change just gives us new material and more revenue, and yeah, and hopefully just keeps us on that projection all the way through into next year with when we reach phase two.
And with the gold that's already coming out of the mine, where is that going? Who's taking that off your hands?
Currently, it's going down to Grangemouth, and then on Grangemouth, it's put on ships and it's sent around the world to blending facilities before it's ultimately enters into China.
You'll obviously be a beneficiary of any big rise in the gold price. I know some forecasters are expecting it to, as inflation picks up, are expecting the gold price to go up above $2,000 an ounce, possibly even further. Will the operation be a direct economic beneficiary of that?
Yeah, of course, in a word, absolutely. And At phase one, as I alluded to before, I'm making money. I didn't really expect to be making as much money as I am now, to be absolutely honest with you. But we are running very, very efficiently, quite lean, and a lot better than I anticipated. But what that does mean is that obviously any increase in gold price that is from now is just it's just cream for us. So it enables us to do more of our growth plans that we originally anticipated. So, but the gold price, I guess, when the project was initiated, was what, around about 1,200 and like. So we're experiencing in US dollar terms. And these days we're experiencing up to what, 1,800, 1,900 US dollars. So it's very, very fortunate. But if it hits 2,000 plus, then what it'll do is it'll just enable us to pay back our debt holders much faster, and it'll enable us to just get into growth and to exploration, and it will really unshackle the company a lot more. Just really allow us to go out and do some exploration and find out how big this gold ridge, or this gold ore body, or gold deposit, whatever we would like to call it, actually is. I mean, I personally, after I've looked at the 2,900 square meters that we actually have under our license, from down to the coast that way to that way, if I looked at some of them, if we actually expanded two or three of them at the time, we could, like I said, we could be enormous, and therefore a massive employer of Scottish people.
In some of your recent communications to the market, you've mentioned how there's scope to make the overall mine more efficient, which would obviously increase profit margins as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yep. So in parallel to growth, because we are in the national park, we are held to incredibly tight boundaries of what we're allowed to do, what we're not allowed to do, as you possibly can imagine, and would expect, actually, right? So as a result of that, we use dry stack tailings rather than have tailings impoundments. It's, again, very technically difficult compared to conventional tailings, because in conventional tailings you can just pump it out and you just put it into a containment pond and that's it. Us, we have to dry it to a certain moisture content. It has to be done absolutely specifically, and it's a batch process. So you have, every single batch has got to be checked and tested and made sure it's actually on spec before it's laid out. So we've made those commitments already, which is, credit to the people who did all the design, and the commitment to the process, and commitment to the people that allowed the permit to go ahead, that they actually insisted on that. So well done to them. But now stepping forward, there's a few more things that we could do. We are still not currently connected up to the mains power grid, which we definitely want to do, to be connected to wind and hydro power. We'd like to put some solar panels on all of the roofs of our buildings and light, to make sure the buildings themselves can roll solar with battery backups and light. That would also be very good for us. I'd love to move our mining fleet across over to batteries if we can. They're small enough, they seem to be able to do that, and all our light vehicles, and get our carbon footprint down to as minimal as possible. Just that on top of all the way that we comply with the national park requirements, I think it would just mean that would be one of the leading contenders to be one of the cleanest mines in the world, I would say.
So I mean, this is one thing I did want to ask you about before we finish, and that is, located in a national park. I live I live not far away from a national park in Sussex, where there's been efforts to carry out fracking, which generated a lot of local opposition. Um, if you're working in something like a UK national park in particular, you're obviously dealing with very, very tight ESG controls. You've mentioned a few things you're already doing there. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, and about how you're making sure that the impact of the actual mine is minimized completely in the case of this?
In an engineering world, the best way to eliminate risk is to just to supplement, to eliminate completely. So, in the case of the design, they use that approach, which means if you don't need to use something and you can get away with not using it, then don't use it. So, we don't use any chemicals, as an example, that other mines of gold mines would use, a la cyanide. So we do not have that. We would never be able to. We would never expect to be able to. So we use minimal amount of chemicals, and the only chemicals that we used have all been certified and like through SEPA, very similar to the sort of chemicals that they may use on water treatment plants and the like. So we try not to use any chemical, or not allowed to use any chemical that is not allowed to be used. So that is from a water potential pollution effectiveness. So we would do that incredibly well, and we monitor any discharges, and we test thoroughly and make sure we put out those reports every single month and put our hand to say that's the way we're going to run. Secondly, then there's sound. Plant, and mine particularly is underground. Plant was designed within a building it was built in such a way that you can stand down here in the bottom of the farmhouse, and honestly, you wouldn't have a clue that there's any mining activities going around because there's no sound, absolutely none. It's 100 decibels inside the building where we've got mills and crushers and everything inside, but because of the way it was designed, there's zero sound down here, which means that the people that are walking along the tracks are not in any way, shape, or form impacted by sound, nor water quality, nor smell, nor any sort of ambience, effectively, to tell them there's mine. The only real way they'd know is because I've got a little sign on the gate over at the entrance to the mine itself to say that this is a gold mine. If it wasn't there, you could probably be accused of not even having a clue that there's a mine in the area. So that's the way to answer that question. We judge ourselves based on the fact that no one knows that we're here, and that is the way we like it.
I guess it's fair to say you're probably one of the cleanest gold mines in the world.
Well, I'd love to be tested in that case, but yes, I believe so. I mean, we're held to such a high accord, and if we do just the things that have been told, plus we do the other, like I said, with sound and the like, and plus that we're lucky enough to have such a very clean concentrate from the geology. The geology here is what makes this whole mine work. The geology enables the gold to be at such high grade, and it also enables the concentrates and like to be such pure quality that our off-takers just want to buy it for the cleanliness that it provides. So that those two principles enables us to really work into the national park as easily as we do. A lot of others may not have the same because they may have nasties and whatnot in their concentrates. So not all would be as lucky, even if they tried to do what we do. They might not be as lucky because of their geology, is what I'm saying.
Well, thanks very much indeed for coming on the podcast today. That's been really interesting and telling us a little bit more about that. And if anyone wants to find out more about the company, there's an awful lot of information on Scotgold Resources website as well, which you can find at scotgoldresources.com. Plenty of information there on Cononish Glen and also some of the other activities with the company. So thank you very much indeed, Phil, for coming on the show today.
No, you're more than welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
You've been listening to the Armchair Trader podcast. Make sure you visit our website, www.thearmchairtrader.com, for your daily dose of financial markets news and sign up to our free newsletter there.